18 minutes to 6, Power Up on Power 98.7. On the line, we've got the Chief Executive of the Vumelana Advisory Fund, Peter Setou, who's going to be talking to us as we reflect on the ground that has been covered in land reform and where the program stands today. I mean, as we, kick off the year, we thought we'd reflect on the land reform developments the developments in land reform, more so given the impact of COVID-19, the challenging economic environment, which has resulted in budgetary cuts and reallocation of resources to other priority areas. Joining us on the line is Peter Setou, who will be speaking about Vumelana, which is a non-profit organization that helps land reform beneficiaries to make their land productive. Peter, good morning.
Good morning to you, Kwena, and your listeners.
Thank you so much for always making time to speak to us. Appreciate your time. I mean, let's go straight to it and talk about the, I think our last conversation we touched briefly on this, the factors that have impacted the budgetary constraints last year in 2021 and how they have affected or could affect land reform developments.
Thank you, Kwena. The reality is that we've had a weak economy in South Africa for a considerable time. Now, we also had COVID, which actually threw spanner into the works. And the arrival of COVID on our shores meant that the resources, which were actually meant for other social responsibility programs and social programs in general, like land reform as an example, had to be diverted to actually deal with the impact of COVID. And which is why we've actually seen the reduction in funding. For example, in the Department of Agriculture, I mean, if you look at the initial funding, which was allocated to the department in 2020, it was slashed by about 2.4 billion to 14.4. And if you looked at the land redistribution and tenure reform, it was cut by a whopping just over 500 million, while the budget for the land reform was reduced by another 403 million. And clearly, if you've got reductions of this magnitude, it means that some of the crucial and critical programs meant to assist beneficiaries of land reform will not be implemented, and which is what has really happened, you know.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've always tried to talk on issues of solutions in this regard. But what effects did this budget cuts have on the beneficiaries themselves? And how do they affect the future specifically of land reform in the country?
Well, firstly, we know that at a point when people or beneficiaries of land reform are given the land, in most instances, they don't have the requisite skill set, you know. Secondly, they don't have access to finance because we know our banking environment in South Africa has not really been inclusive, particularly to cater for people from previously disadvantaged backgrounds. Thirdly, the reality is our people or beneficiaries of land reform do not or did not have, funding so that they can really work the land. So you have a situation where the land is actually given to our people, yet they are not able to work it. And this really does not bode well for land reform in the country, you know. And we've also seen, generally protests from in various quarters where people are really complaining about the fact that they are not getting services, you know. We are all aware of the civil unrest in July, which hit most, especially Gauteng and
KZN.
And KZN, you know. The agricultural industry was the hardest hit by this unrest, you know, and recording the largest drop in output since 2016, which contracted by 13.6. And you can't divorce some of these unrests from, general dissatisfaction about the fact that people feel that things are not really working for them, you know. So if you like, if one really reflects on on these budgetary constraints or cuts and their effect. It means there is no way in which post-settlement support can be provided to our people. Now, post-settlement support is so crucial in land reform and agricultural development.
So, I mean, share with us your reflection as Vumelana, specifically on the challenges experienced in land reform last year and how these can be addressed. I mean, are we finding the right platforms, the right people to talk to in terms of addressing these issues?
Look, the challenges that that land reform continue to face are not new, you know. This is something that we've had over many years. These challenges are well documented in various reports, like, for example, in the Motlanthe report, which is the high-level panel report, as well as in the Presidential Advisory Panel on Land Reform, you know. And really, this talks to the barriers that our people continue to face. I mean, the issue around exorbitant prices for land in some instances. These are some of the stuff that we continue to face. You know, corrupt bureaucrats and officials, communal property associations where there are infightings and, you know, thus really making it difficult for the commission sometimes to, you know, finalize the land claims quickly and efficiently. Insufficient funding to support land reform for the claimants. And this is really here we are talking about post-settlement support and lack of access to finance. Because if the state cannot provide the requisite finance, it means people must look elsewhere for finance. Now, we know that our people don't always get this finance. So these are some of the things that really impacted in the land reform space in last year. The lack of capacity by the state and poor coordination within the state to really run or implement land reform. And lastly, uncertainty about what land reform should really achieve. Because I think as a country, we need to have a very difficult discussion about what is it that we want to achieve with land reform. Because as soon as we can rally everyone around what land reform should actually achieve, then we can agree on the targets, and then we can agree on how we can measure success, you know. And I've already talked about post-settlement support as one of the really key areas that, in my view, I would say, you know, is a highlight for 2021. And these are the things that these are the challenges that I think government, the private sector, and everybody else should be focusing on to address as a matter of urgency.
So in terms of just the legislative and judiciary space for land reform in the past year, have we seen any positive developments last year?
Well, last year we've had some few positives, especially in the legislative and policy front. You know, the announcement by the president during the State of the Nation, where the president indicated that the Land Reform and Development Agency would be created as part of land reform initiative, is really one specific area, and this agency is really geared, or would be geared at facilitating coordination and reducing red tape, and serve as a one-stop for issues related to land reform and development. And I think this should be a welcome development for the country. The second development has been the Land Court Bill. We all know that the Land Claims Court is really, I mean, there are some challenges with the Land Claims Court.
No, absolutely.
Matters take forever sometimes to be resolved. It takes sometimes months, if not years, for matters to be resolved. So this Land Court Bill is aimed at establishing a land court and the Land Court of Appeal. You know, this would be specialized and permanent courts which really would be focusing on land reform matters. So these are dedicated courts, if you like. And the beauty of having this court is that over time we can develop, case law on land reform in general and on land restitution and land rights. You know, the last probably development that one could reflect on is the expropriation bill, and I must immediately indicate that this should not be confused with the process that we saw last year taking place in Parliament, which relates to amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution, which sought to allow expropriation without compensation. This is the bill that was introduced by the Department of Public Works, and it was really aimed at ensuring that we've got an expropriation regime in the country. Yes.
So I mean, it was for public purpose. I mean, as it says, if I remember, for public purpose in the public interest, and also to provide for matters connected within that. And this fell in within Section 25 of the Constitution, isn't it, in terms of property and other things? Yeah.
Yeah. The expropriation bill was really meant to clarify circumstances under which the authorities can actually appropriate. Now, this is just one of the acquisition mechanisms that may be used in appropriate circumstances. So this bill seeks to clarify and really indicate under what circumstances can land be expropriated, and the fact that it can only be used in limited circumstances, things like that. Court will have to be satisfied before it's allowed, and also that the landowner to receive notices in advance and can object, and that amongst others that the state must give reasons why they are expropriating, and the purpose of the land that will the purpose that the land will be used for. So the expropriation bill, if you like, was meant to bring more clarity on expropriation, and this is the clarity that's required by all South Africans as well as the prospective investors.
And I guess beyond the clarity, Peter, it would really be on the enforcement of the land expropriation bill without, I guess, infringing on the rights of equality and so on and so forth, if you read that a little bit further. But also just on that, I mean, now as we enter a new year and looking at the history that we've had in terms of land reform, what can we expect, Peter? Is it all of the same, or are we likely going to see us taking into a new direction?
Well, we would hope that the government would fast-track this legislative development. For example, the implementation of the Land Reform and Development Agency. I think if we can expedite the formation and implementation of this agency, I think this will go a long way towards ensuring that the land reform is more streamlined and there is coordination. The Land Court Bill, if we can fast-track this bill, it will ensure that matters are actually dealt with expeditiously through the justice system. Because currently there are lots of delays at the Land Claims Court. So the implementation of the Land Court and the Land Court of Appeal, we think is a welcome development, and hopefully this year we might see some movement around that. The Land Expropriation Bill, we hope that this would be finalized this year. And again, as I've said, I just want to emphasize the fact that this expropriation bill that I'm talking about is different from the bill, or is different from the arrangements which were meant to amend Section 25 of the Constitution, which sought to allow expropriation without compensation. Because as we all know now, that's history for now, because we know the developments in Parliament where this was really not supported in Parliament.
Finally, Peter, for those who want to find out a little bit more about the work that you do as Vumelana, how do they go about? Where can we find more information?
Well, those who want to get more information about our organization, they can go to our website. It's www.vumelana.org. Yeah, I think that's... Yes.
Okay. Peter, as always, thank you so much for taking time to speak to us. I appreciate your time and your insight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Peter Setou talking to us there from Vumelana. He's the chief executive of the Vumelana Advisory Fund, just reflecting on the ground that has been covered really in land reform and where we stand in terms of programs for today and especially coming out of or still very much in the space of COVID-19, how that has affected things. Quickly, with just about 2 minutes to go before we wrap it up, looking at some of